Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to the 39th beta episode of the GeoGearHeads and our 5th Randomize show. I'm the bad cop.
Back with me, Daryl W4, and we're starting today with an apology for the troubles last weekend with the Cachamaniacs feed. Sadly, we ran into issues with two of our hosting providers, which created multiple problems with our podcast feeds. The couple of errors, those couple of errors should have been resolved, and the last edition of the show was delayed to podcast catcher users because of those errors, and we also ran into problems with shows being released across multiple feeds and to the wrong feeds. So hopefully those issues have been addressed and we won't have any more of these problems in the future.
It was a good reminder. If you missed any of the episodes, you could catch up, though. Now, next week, we're honored to have Andy Anako of Chicago Sun-Times, Twit, and the 5x5 Network join us to talk about what to do if, and I'm going to add when, your device gets wet. In the upcoming weeks, we have a couple of other exciting shows planned, including Gearing Your Off-Road Vehicle with Jeep in Idaho, and the noted creator of gadget caches, WV Tim.
Yeah, a couple of shows that I'm really excited about, and would love your feedback for that, for any of our past shows, or if you have feedback to give us on a good show topic, or moreover, if you actually know someone who would be good to have on the show. Mm-hmm. We always love getting that feedback, whether it's on social media, on our voicemail line at 206-350-3647, or you can email geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com. And we actually got an email with an audio file from XPuckX today on the last show. So let's kick this off with that one.
Hey, GeoGearHeads guys. I was just listening to episode about the POIs versus the waypoints, and you had mentioned about the Explorist planet, the 610, 110 things being able to load the image and only doing that with the Vantage Point software. You can actually load those same images in with GSAC. So you can use GSAC to do that also. Thanks. This is XPunkX.
Yeah, I did look into that a little bit, and he is very accurate, at least with 8.2, which is a version that I have. It does actually support that, and I was thinking it was a macro or something, but no, it's part of their normal export routine. Mm-hmm. So that's a really, really handy feature, and I wasn't able to find that they were doing that for the Garmin units that supported the images, but I thought I had seen something that someone had a macro or something for it, so maybe one of our listeners can log in and tell us about that. But boy, that makes those Explorist GCs and the 10 series units a lot more attractive.
Yes, it does. Now, we also have Google Plus feedback from fellow geocacher Craig Ratt. It says, vehicle safety while traveling to and from caches, as in keeping your eyes on the road and not stuffing around with your GPS.
Yeah, that's a common thread that seems to be going around, not for geocaching in particular, but more for texting, because that's, in the U.S. at least, becoming more and more a major situation. And I believe it was just last week that AT&T really started making a push with their itcanwait.com site, mm-hmm. trying to encourage people to not look at their phones, basically, including texting, while they're driving.
Exactly. Now, I know in Washington State it's against the law to text or even be talking on your cell phone. You can have a hands-free device to talk with, but, get two hands on the wheel. I read that texting on your cell phone is more dangerous than drunk driving. You have less control of your vehicle while you're texting than if you were drunk.
Yeah, which makes a lot more sense, at least if you were drunk driving, which we certainly don't encourage in any respect. Your eyes are still on the road, you're still focused on the road, when you're
Your eyes are on the road. You may not be focused.
Well, you're focused. You just might not have very good focus. Yeah, if you're texting or playing with your GPS, your eyes are on that screen. They're not on the road. You know, your focus is taken away from the road for that one little moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we've all done it before. It's just not a very good situation to be in, and you know, unless it's absolutely necessary, which generally it shouldn't be. But I think we've all had those times where you have to turn out or reach over and turn off that annoying beeping on the GPS because it's rerouting you through a closed road or something. You just don't want to be doing that. Period. Griffin, and we mentioned this back in Beta 19. Has an app that's really nice for iOS users to get a feel for what the laws are in the various states, and that's Griffin Drive Safe, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes again.
Completely free app for your iOS devices. I really recommend it. It also tells you what you can and cannot have mounted in the windows or on the dash of your car, state by state. So.
And this is a company that specializes in making the accessories for the smartphones and such to mount and to make your life easier, so they have a vested interest in making sure that you're doing it right and not getting in trouble, because you know that's how they sell products.
Exactly.
But AT&T is also offering an app for Android and BlackBerry users that will lock out texting functions and automatically return a text that you're currently driving, and you know we'll get back with them when it's safe again. And that is a free app. It's called the Drive Mode app. And we'll link to both the Android and the BlackBerry versions in the show notes as well. But it's not available for iOS or for Windows Phone, and that's pretty apparent as to why they're not available on those platforms, which is those platforms don't give the developers access to that level of control. But those are those are editable text messages that auto responds with. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's a nice little tool that can just run in the background from what I've understood and tell people when you're unavailable, so you know you don't have that need to get back with them and say, hey, I'm driving, I can't do anything, because it's going to tell them for you.
I really like that it auto responds for you. I wasn't aware of that. But you know, keep a kid in the car that can text, and besides, they're going to text a whole lot faster than you ever could to begin with.
Yeah, I have to admit I pass the phone to Firefly 03 quite frequently. And you know, I'd kind of partake in the Gas Buddy updating of the gas prices, and that can be, you know, it's you're just entering in prices, but that can be really distracting. So it's not something I really do on my own. But when I have someone else in the car, or when I'm just a passenger, or you know whatnot, then I participate in it, and you know it's kind of fun to keep that crowdsourced data, you know, current.
Oh, I use that crowdsourced data, but I don't add to it. So that just makes me what, a leecher?
A lurker.
Lurker, okay. But yeah, when you're going out caching, if you're caching with a buddy, let them do all the navigating with the GPSR. Pay attention to the road and where you're driving. It's so much better.
And we mentioned several times that the way to do power caching is that you really want to split the task of driving and navigating so that one person can focus on the driving and one person focuses on the route. And that's just another thing, you know, if you're not in that rat race of trying to get through, you know, 100, 200 caches in a day, or, you know, you're out there hunting FTFs, you know, then pass that stuff off to the person in the passenger seat to handle that for you, and it can make your life a lot easier, and it's a lot better than using something like Siri or Google Go.
There you go. Now, also, do you have something, Daryl?
Nope. I was just going to lead into the Munzie stuff.
Okay. Do you want to?
Sure. Now, we did have a couple of Munzie topics that we had left over from our last Randomize show that we wanted to hit on. And the first one was actually that Munzie on Android now supports NFC tags. So that's something, if people aren't familiar with it, NFC stands for Near Field Communication. And it's a very short-range radio-based communication that allows the phone to talk with other phones and to receive information from small tags and to send information to other devices. So you can do things like payments, which is the most common. There's cool little things like tap this sticker, which is what the Muncie is actually doing to get information. And the coolest application I've heard or seen of using NFC is to put one of those stickers at the front door of like a coffee shop, your business, or even your home, and you can use this app to tap that and program your phone to do things like turn off your Bluetooth if you so wish. It puts in all the settings. It has the password for the Wi-Fi. All that kind of stuff can be triggered by tapping that NFC tag. So that's a really cool application for the technology, and makes it pretty interesting. And then Muncie now has those to find this Muncie kind of stuff happening, but it's only available for Android phones because currently Android phones are the only ones to have NFC. And even the new iPhone 5 does not have NFC. And I think we actually talked about that a little bit on the last Randomize show. Yeah,
just when the iPhone 5 came out, we talked about it. And because of the metal back, the aluminum back of the iPhone 5, NFC is not a possibility. And when we say near-field communication, we're talking an inch or less. It's not Bluetooth. We're not talking 30 feet. We're talking an inch or less.
Yeah, the whole point of this technology was really for handling stuff like mobile payments. And I have to say, the more I'm hearing about it, there's already been a few exploits. And for as far as payments go, it makes me a little bit nervous. What I really do like are the things like setting up the Wi-Fi. I love the idea of just being able to walk into any coffee shop and tap a little square at the door or on the counter that will set up my device, because I've gone into hotels, I've gone into coffee shops where they'll have weird passwords because they just got a regular device, regular access point. They don't have any kind of special gateways to lock it down. So if you don't have those and they want to try to restrict it to their customers, they put in these really weird passwords and things like that.
Exactly. I like the idea of programming one and perhaps putting it right by your bedside. So you could tap that at night to tell your phone, turn off all these things. I don't want to hear you until the morning.
Yeah, I like the idea, though, of the do not disturb functionality that's now on a lot of phones, including iOS 6. Because that, to me, is a lot more convenient than having to tap the phone, just be able to go on, click it, and done. But I do like the idea of, the NFC in general. It's just I don't like that for payments. It makes me a little bit too nervous now.
That's true. Now, there are, as we said, NFC is not built into iPhone 5, and there are no adapters for NFC for the iPhone. So that's not even an option.
That is correct. And I don't think it will be either, because NFC at this point has not really caught on. Someone had been proposing an NFC case for the iPhone, but that was based on the 30-pin dock connector, and at this point, anything on 30-pin dock connector, I would assume, is being killed.
Right. I did see that case, and that was for the 3G, 3GS. So, didn't even come into the iPhone 4. Now, also in the area of Muncies, I've really been in love with this Muncie to GPX website. I hinted at it last week and even the week before. I've really wanted to talk about this for a couple of weeks. It's dfx.at/Muncie. This site is really incredible when you think about it. All it does is take the Muncie information. You can tell it where to search. If you want to put a boundary on it, kind of like a cache along a route boundary, or just simply a radius search. You can output this to a GPX file. You can output it to POIs. You can output it to Google Maps preview. And then you can exclude the ones that don't fit you. Say you want to exclude the NFCs because you can't get that, or the Muncies you've already captured, or the ones you own. It really is a nice utility. I personally just do it to a GPX file. So now I have all this Munzie information with me offline.
Well, I like the idea of being able to load that into something like Geosphere or your GPS or any app that you're going to be using. Except I don't think the Groundspeak app would actually take that well, because I don't know. I'd have to actually give that a shot because I don't think it supports the non-standard geocaching.com waypoints, so I don't think it would do it.
This site has an option when you export as GPX to make it. I'm trying to come up with the name. I'm looking here on the site. Output with Groundspeak GPX extensions. Okay,
so maybe it would work then with like the Groundspeak app at that point. But yeah, just to have the Munzies included in your caching makes it so much easier, because one of my problems that I always have is not being able to go out and hit Munzies and geocaches at the same time, because I have to switch apps or switch devices or even to just switch screens.
Now, we are doing Munzies on smartphones, which they don't have the greatest GPS. But if you can load these Munzie details and I want to say caches, but coordinates onto a regular GPS like my Garmin Oregon, you're going to have a lot better accuracy.
Well, and what I like about it too is it gives you more flexibility. And, the Munzie app is great. It gives you the satellite views, but in certain cases, the satellite views aren't going to be enough. And like you mentioned before, the accuracy isn't very good, and the accuracy of the person who placed that isn't going to be very good either, which still causes a problem. But you do get some better navigation options when you start dealing with other apps and other devices. The GPSs for decades have been doing good navigation, and smartphones are only half a decade old.
That's right. And with a lot of GPSs, it's going to give you turn-by-turn directions. If in the Garmin you have the navigation maps loaded, it'll give you that turn-by-turn direction, which is really pretty nice.
Well, we mentioned it earlier that in most of the geocaching apps, you can jump out to another app that does a turn-by-turn as well.
Right.
So there's all kinds of extra options that would give you, and I really love that option. I really wish, though, that in the official app for Munzie, they would give you some more options for exporting those within the device. Just 1 point even, jump it out to the official Google Maps app for routing, or Navigon or TomTom, whatever that might be.
Right. Well, don't tell Aaron of Munzie, but I like Geosphere's navigation screen better than that of the Munzie app. So I'll just toss that out, and it's just between us.
Well, we'll find out if he finds out or not, because hopefully we'll have him back on the show before too long to kind of talk about some of these changes that are going on over at Munzie, because there have been a number of things going on. Now, one of the other things that you actually put in the show notes is something about a GSAC macro that will take all the Munzies out and do some GSAC filtering to that as well.
The first time I saw somebody using a GPS to get to lead them to a Munzie, I looked at that and go, wait a minute, how did you do this? That doesn't work. He goes, oh, well, there's a GSAC macro. At the time, it took the entire Munzie database and downloaded that and processed it through a GSAC macro. So it picked out the ones that were near you, excluded the ones you had already found. He said it wasn't bad. When I talked to him the next time, he goes, it's over. I can't use that anymore. It takes 2.5 hours to process this file, and that was several months ago. I'm assuming it's going to take an overnight run now to process that file, because it downloads everything. It doesn't have any radius search.
Yeah. Well, hopefully maybe they'll come up with some kind of API that apps like GSAC could plug into. I'd really love to see an API that other geocaching type apps could plug into, other location-based gaming. And especially now with the Explorer students being basically the same core, the Windows CE-based operating system, and which is the foundation for like the Windows Phone 8 stuff. I kind of wonder if there might not be some hope in the future of the phones the Explorers with cameras, getting some kind of support to do Munzie in the field. I know someone had been working on hacking in a Where I Go player for the Explorer series
Yes.
units. So if they could get that going, boy, would that be a cool application as well, because then you could be completely offline. It would just be a question of how could you load that information in to know where they are, and just something like a simple Vantage Point, which is the app that we talked about, or a GSAC macro to do it would be awesome.
Yeah, and even export something as simple as a finds file like the Garmin's do. But there's a lot of different
options. That's a big problem, is how do they get that information back out and up to the web, because it does have to verify it, and you don't want to really do that in just a text file because it would probably be too easy to hack.
I don't know about that, because when you find a Munzie, it's got a unique code at the end of the URL to show that you actually found it. So it would have that unique code and the GPS coordinates. That's basically all they're doing right now for offline Munzies.
Yeah, but I'm thinking they'd probably have to do some type of hashing in order to safety the location and the time, because if they didn't, it'd be really easy to just go in there and do a quick copy and paste and edit a different one to say that you found this one that you didn't really find.
It might be, or simply save them and upload them to a friend and say, here, go find these as well.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. So if you know a way to get Munzies into your GPS, you got to let us know. This is something that I'm having a lot of fun working on. It all started because a friend of mine, actually a friend's sister, I told her about Munzie, and she went out and got one that was right close to her house, and she was hooked. And in fact, she went out and bought a GPS. And I thought, why'd she buy a GPS to go Munzieing?
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So
that's when I started searching the web. Is like, oh wait, I know a guy who can get Munzies onto a GPS. I got to find out how to do this. I came across the dfx.at/Munzie site. Absolutely love it, and it's updated constantly. So you have to go back as new things are being implemented. We'll see. Now I have sent an email out to DFX to see if he'll come on the show, but I haven't heard back. So if you're listening, please come on the show.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed, because that sounds like some interesting information about how that hack happened. But a couple of weeks ago, when we did our last Randomize episode, Team Voyager posted a little bit of an editorial kind of thing to Cache Mania titled GarminWillBuyMunzie.com. And it's not that they're going to go out and buy Munzie.com. It was just speculation that Team Voyager had about Garmin should buy Munzie.com, because it seems to make sense. Now, it is a little bit of a shocking thought, but what do you think about it in general?
The first time I read it, I was like, what? Garmin's going to buy Munzie.com? No, it was speculation. I was shocked. Thought, no way, Munzie's doing well. Why would they consider selling? And then as I read further in the article, they started bringing up some points that, you know what, Garmin's got the capital to really help Munzie get launched. Now, I don't think Munzie needs much help. They have, within a year here, they've really built themselves quite a little empire. So I think, but an influx of resources would allow for faster and smoother growth.
Well, and they've tried to do some of the QR code kind of stuff with their opencaching.com site, and it hasn't really worked too well that I'm aware of. It's not so much that the functionality doesn't work, it's that it just hasn't had the adoption. Mm-hmm. And from what we've seen, it would appear that Munzie has better adoption than opencaching.com. Opencaching.com is kind of just trying to really rehash an existing game, where Munzie is a new derivative of a game. So it's
right.
It's a little bit more than just the rehash that opencaching.com is. But they made some assumptions in that article that I think really were overly generous toward Munzie and their subscribership and
basic financial statements.
yeah. So I don't think that the foundation of that article was very firm as far as that goes. But they did have some interesting points. I don't think it would happen, but it is an interesting thought, and I'm not sure that Garmin would be interested in it just because bringing it to the phone or to their GPSs isn't going to be enough of an incentive for them. Bringing it to a phone, it's not a product that would really make money for them.
Right.
So I just don't see them being all that interested in this in the long term, or in the short term. Who knows? It could happen, but yeah, it was an interesting concept. I just don't think it has any legs.
Well, in the last 16, 18 months, Munsey's gone through a bunch of growing pains. They've had to upgrade servers before they were ready, update and expand their internet pipe before they were ready for it. So an influx of money from Garmin would sure help that growth, again, be much more smooth. Now, Garmin could have bought opencaching.us to get into the listing business. If they wanted to truly jump in and grab a market segment rather than develop opencaching.com, they could have went in and bought, another website.
Well, the opencaching.us only launched about a month or two before the opencaching.com site did. And my understanding from talking with some of the guys from Open Caching on both ends is neither one knew of the other's existence when they were setting up. And opencaching.us is part of that bigger global network. They're not a global site, and opencaching.com really wanted that global reach. They wanted to be a global listing site when they started out because they don't want just North America, which is what US had become, but it originally was just US based. So it really wouldn't have made much sense for them to get opencaching.us. But I don't like the fact that they went with the Open Caching name when the Open Caching name is that open network. It really does create a lot of confusion. But they had some interesting ideas. They just had too many problems when they launched. And I think that the launch of opencaching.us pressured them into launching prematurely.
Yeah. Well, okay. They could have purchased Navicache and Terra Caching.
But neither one, I think, had the global reach that they wanted, and both of them have had diminishing memberships. From what I'm hearing, percentage-wise at least, their attrition rates are fairly significant, as I've heard. Well, not so much for Terra Caching, but Navicache, because Navicache. Wait, I might have my sites mixed up now, but yeah, there was a period where they were going through some turmoil on a couple of the listing sites, actually. So they were losing members, which is to be expected, and hopefully they can. Resurrect the sites with the new leadership on those sites and get them back up and running.
I think it's Terra Caching that just went through a leadership change within the last couple of months.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it is. I've gotten so confused with which site is which at this point, unfortunately.
So, anyway, one other thing that the article points out that I didn't know is that since I don't have a Garmin GPS with a camera, I didn't know that they could read QR codes.
Yeah, and that's basically what I was talking about earlier with the opencaching.com, and they have verified finds, I think was what they were calling it, where it will actually let you capture a QR code to verify that you found and logged that container.
So is that just simply taking a picture, or is that actually processing a QR code?
My understanding is it's processing the QR code, but I can't say for certain because I have not actually had a chance to try it, and I don't have a Garmin unit with a camera.
Okay.
And around here, we don't have many opencaching.com caches, period.
Right.
None of them that I could find when I last looked had the QR codes for verification.
Right. So, the Garmin GPSs apparently can read and decipher QR codes. So, if they did go and try to purchase Munzie.com, a quick change to Munzie.com to be able to upload capture logs from within the device, and I think it could be a possibility. But again, I think that's a big stretch.
Yeah, it is. Now, let's move away from Munzie and kind of talk a little bit about HTC phones. And there's two new Windows Phone 8 phones launched by HTC. Again, these are not going to be available until November because Windows Phone 8 isn't available until then. But you can get the official geocaching.com app on there, and the Munzie app is available for them. And these are, from what I am hearing and seeing, like the phones to get unless you want the better quality camera from the Nokia Lumia 920.
Mm-hmm.
So the 8X has a 4.3-inch screen with a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processor, a gig of RAM, 16 gigs for storage, a micro SD card, and the NFC support with an 8-megapixel camera on the back and a 2.1 megapixel camera on the front. So this is a phone that basically comes right in line with a lot of the current high-end Android phones,
mm-hmm.
and really kind of is comparable to the iPhone 5. You can
mm-hmm.
find Android phones that go above this, and the iPhone 5 doesn't quite match these specs, except for the storage space on the iPhone, but it doesn't allow for the SD cards,
which you can stick another 32 gigs in.
I think they're actually up to 64 now.
64.
So yeah, that's a big feature to have. But that's their flagship, their high performance model. But they also have the 8S, which is a 4-inch version, which strips back the features quite a bit. And this is their economy phone. It's a lot more like your iPhone 4 on specs. It has the 1 gigahertz dual-core processor, half a gig of RAM. It has only 4 gigs of storage space. Still has a micro SD card, which if it only had the 4 gigs and no micro SD card, that
would be hard.
A device you could even work with. But it only has a 5-megapixel camera. But interestingly, they don't have any front-facing camera. And that's something that, at this point, for caching at least, I don't want to do without, because all too often, that's the camera I'm using to get the shots for those Earth caches or virtual caches where you have to get the shot of you, because there's nothing easier than that front-facing camera.
Yeah. A friend.
Well, if you can, but a lot of the times we're out there caching just the two of us, and we want to get both of us in because it's...
No, I understand.
Yeah, and those front-facing cameras are awful. They are really terrible, but
they're handy.
Exactly, they do the job. They'll get you what you need, and for web use, they're great. You're going to down, if you're thinking about it, you're going to downsample it anyway, because you don't want to upload anything more than about a 1 megapixel camera or image to the website anyway. So if that's what you're doing and you have a 1.3 or 1.7, that's more than adequate, and it's not like you're going to be printing them.
No, and for doing something like Skype, any FaceTime, face-to-face conversation, a front camera's fine.
Yeah. Now, we do want to mention one thing, because I think both of us are going to be getting the iPhone 5, and I made that decision just last Sunday while, on the phone with AT&T and trying to figure out rate plans and everything. But the Lightning connector has been torn down, and that's that connector that is new for the iPhone 5 and on a lot of the new iPods.
Mm-hmm.
And
that
it actually...
all-digital connector.
Yeah, it's an interesting connector. It has what they're calling an Apple Insider, and we'll include a link to it, authentication chips, but it is a lot more complex cable, and the authentication chips are not just authentication. Some of the interesting things that we're hearing about those cables is the way that it's doing the reversing of the data flows. If you put the cable in front or back, it doesn't matter. They're actually doing a lot of that sensing in those chips. And the cable is actually now a smart cable, so it's going to make those cables a lot more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that's going to provide some problems and raise the cost. There's a $19 cable from Apple, which
$39 cable, $40 cable.
no, that's for the adapter. The cables themselves are
they
only
$29
$19. No, it's
Oh.
$19 for the
Okay.
cable. It's $29 for the adapter and $39 for the adapter cable. Because they did make it a little complex.
Right. Sorry, you got it.
But what is happening in those adapter units, which are the Lightning to 30-pin dock connectors, those actually have the DA, the digital to analog audio converter, so that you can get line out levels from those things.
Right.
And because of that, that's why they're more expensive. That will allow you to plug into a lot of the clock radios, the boombox kind of things, a lot of the cars. But it doesn't support some of the cars. It doesn't support video. So that's all stuff that's coming later. It doesn't support the VGA or the HDMI. But the big thing that we wanted to poke at, the big thing that we did want to poke at with this is some of the guys who have torn this down and looked at it believe that there's going to be a USB direct mode, which is kind of like the USB on the go, from what I'm understanding. So we might have eventually a conduit from this new connector to talk with things like the GPSs, like the Garmin. So that could be really intriguing in the future and give iPhone users a lot of the functionality that right now only exists on some of the Android phones.
Right. So this would give us direct USB in and out of the iPhone. So perhaps a better camera.
Well, yeah, better camera would give you the option of audio interfaces. There's all kinds of things, and one of the bits, we really don't know a whole lot about this connector yet because there's not a whole lot of information out there. But one of the speculations has been that it is going to be supporting USB 3.
Right. But there's no USB 3 cables at this point.
Right, and the devices don't currently support USB 3. Or, so people believe. It's future upgrade. Expect probably to see USB 3 in these cables. But from what it sounds like, because of the way these cables are built, some of that is now relegated to the cable rather than being necessary in the hardware. So it's an interesting concept. It does mean they're going to be more expensive, and we really don't know a whole lot about what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
But it does seem a little bit more promising than the 30-pin dock connector had been.
That's true. And a lot of the insiders before the iPhone 5 was released was shocked that there weren't any third-party cables being released.
Right, and the reason is because it does require these special chips.
Exactly. So monoprice is out for your cheap Apple cables at this point.
Yeah, and we might see those eventually. And what I'm hoping is maybe that the chips aren't really necessary if you're just going to be charging. But we'll have to see. Because if you can have a cheap battery case kind of thing, you don't want to have those chips necessarily in the battery case because of the price. But if they're cheap enough, who knows? Yeah, we don't know enough about how that cable has really been engineered at this point. It's all been speculation based on informed teardowns.
Right. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did our Randomize show and talked about a whole bunch of devices. A couple more have come to market.
Yeah, the Nook HD and the HD Plus were announced just today. And the HD is a $200 7-inch tablet. Nice looking device. In my opinion, not worth the $200. And the HD Plus came out, which is a 9-inch tablet.
Right.
Neither one of these are currently available, we should probably add. But that one starts at only $270, so it is a cheap 9-inch tablet. And these do use the Nook store, so you can get some of the apps on there. And the previous Nooks have been hackable, so it's entirely possible you'll see that HD Plus rooted and reloaded with something like Ice Cream Sandwich or Jelly Bean in the not too distant future.
Right.
When that happens, that's going to make it a nice, cheap 9-inch Android tablet if that's what you're looking for.
Right.
But again, I don't see anything that indicates any support for GPS in these things. So yeah, they're not really something I would recommend to the cachers. And neither one of these has any kind of wireless support aside from the Bluetooth or from the Wi-Fi. So you're not going to be able to take it and get that cheap LTE wireless plan like you could with the what is the Fire HD Plus?
Fire HD.
Fire HD LTE.
Yeah.
So that's disappointing because that's what I really liked about that Fire was that cheap plan.
So there we go. A couple more devices. Not going to rock the geocaching world, but if you're into reading, those aren't bad. I still think the Nexus 7 is the best 7-inch tablet out there, and there's nothing that really is competing with it at this point.
Not at this point. They've got that lockdown pretty tight. Yeah, I think that we've seen some talk of coming 7-inch tablets that are going to be comparable, and most of those look like they're going to be a little bit better in that they'll have things like the camera or the LTE, but even the Nexus 7 is supposed to be getting wireless support in some areas. So keep an eye out for that if that's what you're looking for, because I was looking at that option when I ended up renewing and getting the iPhone 5 on my contract with AT&T. Was maybe I'll just go back down to a feature phone because I don't use the phone for calls anymore. It's I use it mostly as a tablet.
It's a great little handheld computer. Oh, it can make phone calls.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, why am I spending all this money for the voice calling when really what I'm using is the data service? So it was one of those, weighing the pros and cons. And at this point, I really didn't see dropping voice service altogether, because that also loses the texting, and then you have to go with some kind of alternate support for texting and whatnot. So it just creates a mess.
There are always options. It's just not as clean.
Yep, indeed. And that's why I stuck with the iPhone. It was clean. It made my life easier, and I really, really, really wanted to go Android. But at this point, there's no way I'm going to be buying any Motorola phone. I really am not a fan of Samsung's tweaks to the UI. I really wanted just that clean, unadulterated experience from from Google, and the Galaxy Nexus is just a little bit too old and long in the tooth at this point. I didn't want to, sign a New-year contract with that phone. Right.
Well, my thinking of sticking with the iPhone is I really wanted to go Android as well, but I've already invested the money in the apps. I may as well stay with it. And then I'm thinking as I'm driving home from the store going, well, wait a minute. I could have paid $50 less for Galaxy S3. $50 is about all I need to spend in apps. I would have come out the same.
Yeah, well, so there's some issues with the apps. Most of the stuff is available on both platforms, but not all of the apps are available on either platform. There's some stuff available for Android that's not really available for iOS, and vice versa. So it still is a little bit of a pull out the scale and figure out which works best for you before you make your final determination.
Exactly. Now, in all this, there's still supposed to be an announcement sometime in October for an iPad mini.
Well, I wouldn't say supposed to. There's rumored to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, but there's also still talk that we haven't seen updates to the iMac, to the Mac Pro, or the Mac Mini. And we did have those updates on their other computers. So there's some speculation as to whether or not it's going to be a mini or not. My personal feeling at this point, we're probably not going to see an iPad mini until we see the next version of the full iPad, which is going to probably be late January, early February. That's the new iPad? Correct, the new iPad. Maybe they'll call it the newest iPad.
The newest.
I'm hoping they just call it the iPad 3.
3, yeah. The other one was kind of the 2S, right?
Yeah, well, they had the 2, and they had the iPad
New.
with Retina. Well, they seem to be calling it now the iPad with Retina display.
Okay.
So, who knows what they'll
Or
end
I've
up
heard it the
calling
iPad LTE.
Yeah. Well, if you have the LTE version, they just call it iPad LTE. But if you don't have the LTE,
okay.
it's the iPad with Retina. So it's like, man, can we get any more confusing?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I'm sure we can.
I'm a simple guy. Just give me numbers.
Indeed, it makes it a lot easier. All right. Well, join us next week when we talk with Andy and Nako more about how to keep your devices safe after you've gotten them wet. Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal contribution through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Offenauer and Daryl Wanberg. GeoGearHeads... I already said that. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.